Hello and welcome to this edition of Biz Talk on CGTN. I'm Lily Lu in Beijing. In just a few months' time, AI-powered chatbot ChatGPT becomes the hottest issue in the tech world. The success of ChatGPT has generated investment frenzy. UBS predicts that AI is set to boom into a $90 billion industry by 2025. So how will a global chatbot race unfold for us? What changes will AI bring to our lives? Today, we talk to Dr. Piero Scaruffi, founder of Silicon Valley Artificial Intelligence Research Institute and the author of 100 Years of Silicon Valley. Mr. Scaruffi, thank you for joining us on the show.
Thank you for inviting me.
Before I walk into the studio this morning, I talked with about a dozen of my friends and colleagues and asking them two questions. One, have you heard of ChatGPT? The other, do you know how it works? So almost all of them have heard of it, but about half of them doesn't know what exactly is ChatGPT. So can we start with this? Can you simply explain to us what exactly it is and why is it blowing everyone's mind?
So ChatGPT is a chatbot. I assume that people know by now, they know what a chatbot is. The key thing is that ChatGPT is based on a language model called GPT-3 in particular. And so the really important thing is to understand what the language model is. And so it's not easy to explain in a few words, but basically a language model is a system that studies a very large number of text written by humans and learns a sort of statistical distribution of words and how words combine with each other. Basically, indirectly, it learns how we use words without knowing anything about the meaning of those words. It just knows that usually that word is associated with another word. That's a language model. And there has been an explosion of language models after Google invented a particular software architecture called the transformer. This was in 2017. That transformer architecture was very successful in machine translation. And basically does two things. It encodes and it decodes. And in 2018, some very bright Google engineers realized that if you only use the decode, the system can produce very fluent multi-sentence articles that look like Wikipedia articles. Now, your friend was asking you how it works. And the honest truth that we don't really know. There's still a little bit of mystery about how this language model ends up being able to write very good articles. GPT, at the end of the day, what GPT, in particular GPT-3, does is predict the next word in a sentence. That's really what it does. And people, of course, are amazed that that's enough to actually produce very good tests. Well, apparently, yes. So ChatGPT is built on GPT-3, and the real miracle is GPT-3, actually.
You used the word miracle. Would you say that this is a remarkable achievement, like an AI revolution, a game changer, or maybe it is just a buzzword?
So the short answer is no. It's not a major revolution. It's certainly progress. Like most progress, there's still a long way to go. And like most new things, you have to be really careful how you use them. So that becomes a long discussion. It's also important to realize when I say miracle, I exaggerate. I mean, there's been a progress, and the progress has been a very rapid after that invention of the transformer architecture in 2017. So in 5 years, so many things happened. And these language models have evolved very rapidly. But it's been an evolution. It's not been one day we wake up and suddenly they produce articles.
You talked about this change in 5 years' time, from 2017 Transformer until now. So you said many things happened. I mean, we know there was a global pandemic going on, so many people are moving more and more of their parts of lives to online. And then there's currently there's this global economic crisis going on. So all these background, how do you think all this big backdrop contributes to the progress of AI?
No, I think this was independent. I think what happened would have happened anyway. And after all, most of the scientists work in an office or at home, pretty isolated from the social environment. So I think this was happening, and we saw it happening month after month, almost literally. I mean, in 2017, you have Transformer. In 2018, there are these theoretical articles. In 2019, Facebook introduces Roberta. Microsoft introduces XLNet. OpenAI introduces the second GPT, I think GPT-2. So we've seen this program, and it's been very fast. NVIDIA Megatron, Google come up with Albert, Google T5, and so on and so on and so on. And then you have GPT-3, and then you have ChatGPT. So if you follow, there's really a progress and evolution, although it's been very fast, but I think it would have happened anyway.
It has to happen step by step. So now people, they're all talking about ChatGPT, and they talk about how there are some fun ways of using it, actually. Some people ask it to write poems, to tell jokes. So, Mr. Scaruffi, what are some of the fun ways that you use ChatGPT?
No, that's actually a very good question, because so let me give a serious answer, because it's important people understand this. So ChatGPT has huge limitations. Not only ChatGPT, probably you heard some embarrassing moments in the recent history of these language models. Google's parent company lost almost $100 million in value after Google demonstrated its own competitor of ChatGPT. Facebook's chatbot lasted, if I'm not wrong, it lasted 3 days, and then they took it down because it was embarrassing. Microsoft gave a demonstration of its own, and it had mistakes. The scary thing is that the people who were at the demonstration didn't realize that there were mistakes. So there's huge limitations in the use of ChatGPT, and I can tell you a lot of stories of most of what we discuss actually is the mistakes, the kind of mistakes that it makes. So if you want, I can talk more about the mistakes. So I'm actually happy if people think of ChatGPT as entertainment, as a new toy that you can play with. And I can give you 2 or 3 examples of people are doing very, very creative things, artists who are doing very, very creative things. So I personally play with it to see what kind of mistakes it makes, because the mistakes tell you what kind of progress still has to happen.
So what are some of the limitations or potential that ChatGPT has in marketing specifically?
So in marketing, I don't know, but I can tell you some of the limitations that not only me, we're all finding out. So every now and then it gives a very, very wrong answers about simple things. I asked how many letters are in the word 5, and he replied that the word 5 has 5 letters. But if you ask how many letters are in 1 or 2, it will give the right answer. And if you ask ChatGPT to calculate a mathematical expression, usually it does it right. So why did it fail when I ask how many letters in the word 5? There are 4. So every now and then there are these things that we can't really explain. That's already scary. I mean, usually if a bridge collapses, the engineer can tell you why. Okay, and then there's this fact that it makes things up, right? So and it's interesting when it makes things up. I asked ChatGPT something about a very obscure film made a century ago by a French director called L'Herbier, whatever. It's something that you have to be a specialist to know about. Well, it gave a very long answer, as if like somebody was seen the film, but it was all wrong. It was all invented. You know, the actress, it had the wrong name of the actress, the wrong name of the second actor there, the wrong storyline. It even implied that it wasn't silent. That movie is silent, fully silent. How did he make this up? So it looks like by forcing the system to write very good language, the language has to invent things that are not true. And then there's the fact that sometimes it doesn't know things that Google knows. You know, I asked something about a meeting between the King of Italy and Italy's national hero. This is a famous meeting in Italy. And you can find it. If you just Google, you will find it. But ChatGPT replied, I don't have enough information to. The other thing that is well known is that ChatGPT uses a language model. The language model has been created at a certain point in time. Anything that happened after that, ChatGPT doesn't know it.
Oh.
So if you ask ChatGPT, does Croatia use the euro? It will probably answer no, because Croatia joined the euro only this January, only a few weeks ago. So these are all the limitations, right? And that's why other language models had such a big truth. So the simple truth is that there are fundamental limitations to the technology of deep learning, to the underlying technology. And the fundamental limitation, the limitation of all limitations, is the inability to distinguish truth from falsehood, what is true from what is false. So that's the thing to be very concerned about. Even more concerning is the fact that he writes such credible sentences. When you read the article, it looks like a very professional article.
Yes.
So that if you combine the two, you have reason to be a little worried. And I'm actually worried that today somebody showed me a survey that showed that this, where is it? 71% of big corporations and 80% of medium-sized companies plan to adopt chatbots this year. Well, I hope they know the limitations. Anyway, coming to the fun applications that you can, what you can do with this chatbot. I don't know if you heard, last year an Italian artist and programmer, Giacomo Micheli, launched a website called The Infinite Conversation. You can Google it, you will find it. He put two chatbots and made them talk to each other. So the output of one chatbot goes to the other one. And one is a virtual avatar of a philosopher, and the other one is a virtual avatar of a German intellectual, I can't remember, maybe a filmmaker. And they talk to each other all the time. You can Google it right now, you will see what they're saying. And this is called the infinite conversation because, of course, it can go on forever and ever and ever. That's kind of cool, intriguing, and funny to see what they say. And then my friend Javier Ideami in Spain, he can give ideas to a lot of people who like technology. He made a film. The film is not available yet. You can find only a short teaser on YouTube, where he used generative AI. So chatbot is generative AI to make a movie. So he used the GPT-3 to generate text. Then he used a system called Stable Diffusion, very popular, to turn text into images. Then he used a system called NERF to turn the images into three-dimensional scenes. Then he used more AI to turn these 3D scenes into a movie. Okay, so this is this is a lot of fun, and it's very creative, and someday it will create competitors on Hollywood.
Yes, that sounds really fun. And speaking of generative AI, it is also in China having a bit of a moment right now. A number of tech companies in China, like the big names that you have heard of, Alibaba, JD.com, NetEase, and Tencent, they have all actually joined the AI race with product announcements lately. Tech giants like China's search engine Baidu is launching its own version of AI bot, Ernie Bot, or in Chinese Wenxin in March. And what is going to do is to understand both Chinese and English and text-to-image generation. So markets like that. I mean, Baidu stock jumped to about a one-year high after the announcement of the news. So it seems that this is a bit of a mania already in China. So let's talk about this. First of all, why do you think wasn't ChatGPT invented in China first?
Well, I mean, I respect Chinese technology, and I think China has come up with amazing technology in the last 10 years. But with all due respect, deep learning was invented in Canada, England. So a lot of this technology came first from Western research centers. So it's not surprising that there's still a little advantage there.
Yes, other countries.
I wouldn't know the specifics, but
yes,
it's based on generative AI that was invented in the West, which is based on the transformer that was made at Google, which is based on. So all of these groups, of course, have those few, I don't know, years, months, weeks of advantage.
Yes, have a bit of a catching up to do here. And many people are asking questions, what jobs are more likely to be taken over by ChatGPT in the future? What is your answer to that?
Now, this is always the wrong question. The question is which jobs will be created?
Okay.
See, a few years ago, we had the same question. How many drivers are going to lose their job because of self-driving cars? I think the number of drivers who lost their job is zero. But on the other hand, we create a lot of jobs, well-paid jobs, people who build the self-driving cars and people who write the software. And the same, I don't know if anybody will lose their job. I suspect that new jobs will be created.
And we know that in some schools or school districts, they're actually banning ChatGPT tool on school networks and devices. Do you think this may be the right course of action? How do you think ChatGPT is affecting college admissions and reshaping education?
Yeah, so that's up to the student, and we have to teach students that it's important for them to learn, not to cheat. See, I also cheated. I was a student, I cheated. I was stupid because if I cheat, I don't learn. And eventually that will be a problem. I will not be as smart as somebody else. So in places like Stanford, Harvard, or Tsinghua University, Peking University, I don't think students want to cheat. Students want to learn. And yes, every now and then you have the pressure, oh my God, I have to succeed tomorrow morning. But in general, I don't think so. I think good students want to learn. Their motivation is to learn. They know their parents spend a lot of money to send them to school. Why? To cheat? No, to learn. And so we have to just spread the right message to kids. Of course, in high school, they're not mature enough to understand this. So in high school, that's more important, that we spread the right message. You are here to learn, not to cheat. And that's important for the rest of your life. So, and I mean, technology can also solve that problem. Technology, there's already a system at UC Berkeley, probably not the only one, that can detect if the text was generated by a machine. So at some point we'll have also, teachers will have this tool. But I think it's more important to just convince students that they have to study, they have to learn what they're studying, they have to understand what they're learning, and ChatGPT doesn't help you there.
And another question that I have is, how do you think bias and discrimination can be avoided in ChatGPT?
Oh, I think it's an impossible mission. I think as long see, the only way to avoid that is that somebody would have to create the data set manually and choose carefully the text that this system will learn. Again, these systems are stupid. We have to stop using the word artificial intelligence. These systems don't have intelligence, our kind of intelligence. So they don't know what is proper, what is not proper, what is polite, what is rude. They just don't know. And of course, they don't know what is racist, and they cannot see bias because they don't live in our society. It will take a long time before we can give machines common sense understanding of our societies. So I think it's really very, very difficult. And that's incidentally, that's precisely why Facebook took down its chat bot, because it was really afraid. Facebook has already been a target of accusations and so on. And so didn't want to have another system that creates that problem. I think it's almost impossible to avoid the problem unless, again, unless you use 1,000 students to select the millions of text that you are going to feed into the machine, which is,
And how scalable is ChatGPT right now? Can it process, large scale data already?
Yeah, apparently, I haven't heard anything that makes me think there is a limit. In fact, ChatGPT is based on GPT-3. GPT-3 right now is not the biggest model. There are models that are way bigger. There's probably Megatron is the biggest now. It's I don't know many times, but a lot bigger than ChatGPT. So potentially, I don't see the limit. I mean, the limit is really the microprocessors. That's why when people ask me what's the future, I always ask them what's the future of machines, processors, hardware, because that's the limit. But if you have very fast machines and you make them work for a very long time, I don't see the limit.
What about concerns on ChatGPT or chatbots like this for cybersecurity?
Oh, I'm sure that there are top experts in every government studying this. I don't think the problem is ChatGPT per se. The problem is just that these language models can simulate real world conversations, real world documents. So I'm sure there are people studying this. So every technology can be misused, and the danger of this one is probably that it produces such credible text. It really looks like it's being written by professionals. So in a sense, that's the danger.
And of course, we know that it actually only took about 5 days for ChatGPT to reach 1 million users, and then the number of monthly users went beyond 100 million in the month of January. And Microsoft then decided to pump about $10 billion into ChatGPT maker OpenAI following its initial investment of $1 billion back in 2019. So now it hopes to use this new technology to revive the search engine boom, and that could change the dynamics in the search engine market. And so that is why Alphabet Google isn't sitting still. I mean, it spent almost $400 million on AI startup Anthropic as its own chatbot to rival ChatGPT, but it has not gone smoothly. A factual error led to about $100 billion being wiped off the company's market value. This AI product race globally is being spurred by the success of ChatGPT. So how deep will AI change the future of humanity to you?
Well, this is a question for philosophers, but also, again, let's not exaggerate. Every new technology has changed the way we live, but also the way we think, the way we interact. Think of the massive revolutions a century ago with the telephone and the radio, of the revolution of television. So each of these things have changed society so much and really created a new era in the way we live, interact, think. So I don't see this as being so different. Certainly, there is already a difference in the way we think of machines. And in general, I think actually is a positive way. I grew up when people thought artificial intelligence was the kind you see in Hollywood, right? So these super intelligent machines. And until a few years ago, there were a lot of people talking about the singularity. I think now it's a little less popular. As people start using these tools, they realize they are technologies. They can do things. There are also things they cannot do. So I think, yeah, it will change many things, but let's not exaggerate. I mean, the easiest comparison is the search engine. When the search engine, we now take it for granted. But until not long ago, most people didn't have access to a search engine. My first search engine was probably Alta Vista in the mid 90s. And for most people, it was probably Google when 10, 15 years ago. Well, that's changed dramatically your life, right? And indirectly changed the way people think, because now they take for granted this enormous amount of information. People take for granted that they can learn anything on YouTube. In China, I don't know what is the equivalent.
Yeah.
You just go there and you will find a video that gives you the answer.
Yes.
And shows you how to park the car, how to get gasoline, So that changed. So ChatGPT, chatbots in general can be the next step in this new way of thinking and living and so on. But I don't think it's qualitatively that different from what we experienced before. That's what philosophers, sociologists discuss, is the fact that all these incremental steps are happening so fast.
But do you think that technology tools like this is actually improving the human being's learning ability, or the other way?
Oh, that's another long discussion. Think of the navigator. I grew up when there was no navigator in the car. You had a map. You had to physically open the map, study the map, and then start driving, right? And if you got lost, you had to stop and ask somebody. So now most people rely on navigators so much that I don't know what they would do if the phone dies. So does that mean that they became more stupid, or does that mean that thanks to the navigator they can do some other things? We can argue forever. Thousands of years ago, people were memorizing very long poems. The reason we know Homer's poems is because some people memorized them, generation after generation after generation. Can you memorize a 10,000 line poem? So we lost some skills. Technology made us more stupid in a sense, but hopefully made us more intelligent in some other sense. So that's been discussed by philosophers for a long time.
Yeah, I agree. It is a philosophic question. Maybe we should ask ChatGPT how it is going to answer that question. So my next question is, what do you think is the next generation tech innovations and trends that will be reshaping the coming decades?
So predicting the future is a very bad job, right? Almost nobody gets it right. And my experience, having been around the internet, artificial intelligence, since I was a very young man, my experience is that in this field, it's unpredictable because a lot depends on the machines. That's something that we neglected in the 80s. All the revolution that we are talking about starts with deep learning, and deep learning was made possible by very powerful machines. Indirectly, actually, it was video games that gave us with these very powerful machines. So even that was a coincidence. So if somebody had told me 40 years ago, somebody had told me, look, in the 80s, they will develop these very powerful machines called GPUs. And in the 90s, somebody will start thinking of using them for AI, and in the 2000s, and so on and so on and so on. If somebody had told me that, maybe I would have predicted deep learning. I would have predicted AlphaGo and so on. So So it's really hard to predict the future without knowing what new machines will come available and what kind of power, hardware power we'll have. I know it may sound like I'm avoiding the answer, but this is something I've been thinking a lot about. And a lot of the history of progress in artificial intelligence has been sort of a coincidence driven by the hardware that was available, by the processors that were available. When people ask me to predict the future in AI, I tell them to check with the ASML. ASML is a company in Holland. It's pretty much the only company that has extreme ultraviolet technology to make very, very, very teeny chips, the chips of the future. Ask them what will be the power of the machines in 10 years, and then maybe I can make some predictions. But right now, everybody will just predict, oh, we'll have more powerful chatbots. But they could be a big surprise that we don't see coming right now.
Yeah, people are wondering about how far can AI go actually. What do you think are some of the either the potential or maybe limitations that lies in the real world for the development of AI?
Yeah, that's a very important question because so AI risks following the path of other scientific research that sometimes keeps going the same direction without realizing maybe we reached the limit. So AI today, when we talk about AI today, most people talk about deep learning, which is a technology invented more or less in 2012. And it has given us all the things that are popular today. But just adding more computational power might not give us much more. So one thing that we should keep in mind that that's one kind of artificial intelligence. Before we were doing other things, and those other things now look obsolete again because computational power has made deep learning popular. But there could be limitations. I can see that text-to-text translation can still improve, and that's great. It will give us a lot of access to text written in other languages. Speech-to-speech translation is going to be also very useful. But for example, medical applications have been the big promise of AI. That's something that would be very useful. It will have a very important impact. But people are having doubts about what you can do with deep learning, because in medicine, a mistake is very serious. It's not just something you laugh about. So it's a very good question. It's possible that deep learning is probably not the end of the story. At some point, somebody will come up, in my opinion, with a new kind of AI that will probably solve some of the limitations.
So, sir, you have based in the Silicon Valley for a long time. Why do some say that the golden era of Silicon Valley is coming to an end, and what do you have to say to that?
So I came to Silicon Valley in 1983, and they told me Silicon Valley is finished because the Japanese were beating Intel and the other chip manufacturer in chips. And of course, in reality, those were the years when the personal computer was starting. Then a few years later, they told me that Silicon Valley was finished because IBM and the other big companies were making personal computers cheaper and so on and so on. And in fact, companies like Apple almost went bankrupt. Well, guess what? Those were the years when the internet, the World Wide Web was starting. And so we had the dot-com boom. And then in 2000, the dot-coms crashed, and they told me Silicon Valley is finished. And guess what? Google had just been founded. And a few years later, Facebook was founded. Then in 2007, we had the Great Recession. You didn't have it in China, but in the US, it was a big recession. They told me Silicon Valley is finished. Those were the years when Airbnb and Uber was about to start. Then we had COVID, and Zoom came out. So I heard this story too many times. So I think crises are good for Silicon Valley because they get rid of some of the old ideas and they help new ideas emerge.
So it sounds like you're a firm believer in technology. Do you believe that technology development will be ushering the human being into a new era instead of civilization going forward?
Technology has always given us new eras. I think technology has mostly been good so far for humanity because we come from the caves and we come from, just a century ago, the life expectancy, even in the United States, was what, 44, 44, 45? Now it's 80. So very few people starve. I grew up when a lot of people, including in China, were starving. So technology has certainly given us a better life in general. And hopefully we'll keep doing that. I think every technology has changed the way we live, think, interact.
There are many countries in the world that try to actually mimic the Silicon Valley ecosystem. In China, we too have our own high-tech parks. What would be your advices for countries that are trying to do so?
Yeah, so all of them so far failed to create something that is really like Silicon Valley. Now, that doesn't mean that they cannot innovate. My favorite example is actually Japan, which had tremendous innovation between 1950 and 1990. And it was the exact opposite of Silicon Valley. So it's not the only way to innovate. Silicon Valley is kind of unique because I think because of the culture. The culture is unique. It's this mix of artists, musicians, politicians, engineers, scientists. It's kind of a unique thing. And then it's in the United States that has always had this strong push for innovation. Innovation didn't start with Silicon Valley. Think of Edison, Bell, Ford, Robert Fulton, Morse, the telegraph, the polio vaccine. Television. This had nothing to do with Silicon Valley. Television actually did, but all the others didn't. So innovation has been built in the social political system of the United States for a long time. One thing that benefits the United States in general, and in particular the Bay Area, is immigration. That's one huge advantage we have here. Just read the data. Most I don't remember if it's 55%. The majority of the billion-dollar startups in the United States were founded by immigrants right now, 2022, a few months ago. And these startups together, they are more than $1 trillion value. So that's the GDP of a country in Europe. Almost half of the semiconductor engineers in the Bay Area are immigrants. This is a huge advantage. So basically, China is trying to do the same thing with only Chinese citizens, relying on the fact that there are 1.4 billion Chinese citizens. But there's still an advantage when you have people coming from all over the world, because just different cultures, different way of thinking come together. And so Silicon Valley is this huge advantage. Just think of the number of companies that had an immigrant founder. First of all, Google, Sergey Brin, PayPal, Peter Thiel, Max Levchin, Tesla, Elon Musk, NVIDIA from Taiwan, Facebook, the other co-founder, the one who is not famous, were from Brazil, eBay from France, Yahoo, another Chinese from Taiwan, Uber from Canada, Zoom, another Chinese from Taiwan. I can go on. These are big names. So immigrants, including me, are really a typical. They're just, in my opinion, it's a big advantage. The internet wouldn't exist without Paul Baran, who was from Poland. The microprocessor wouldn't exist without Federico Faggin, Italy, Jen Hornitz, Switzerland, Eugene Kleiner, Austria. AI. Think of AI, modern AI, deep learning.
Mm-hmm.
Fei Li from China, Andrew Ng from Britain, Sebastian Thrun from Germany, Jeffrey Hinton, Britain, Andrei Karpati from Slovakia, Jan LeCun, France. These are all the directors of AI in Silicon Valley now. That's a huge advantage.
This is a great point. Actually, you're talking about how immigrants and people coming from different cultural backgrounds, what they can contribute to the progress of AI technology development. And on the other end of this value chain, the market. Each market has its own specific characteristics, its own qualities, and people have different user habits, and it comes from different cultural backgrounds. So China's first GPT-like software, Moss, it will be made a public source by the end of this month, according to plans. And then I mentioned earlier, China's search engine Baidu will announce details of its own GPT alternative, which is called Ernie Bot, in just a couple of months, a couple of weeks' time, actually. What is your observation on China's chatbot race?
Oh, I'm not aware. I haven't been in China. I used to come very often. I really love China and the Chinese people. But I haven't been since the beginning of COVID. Last time I was in China was November 2019. And so...
But China, China has been, putting a lot of, actually accelerating its bit in technology research and development. What should China do in order to become what it wished for, that is to become an innovation house?
Well, I think China is already an innovation powerhouse. It's certainly, I mean, if you consider where it's coming from, in just 20 years, it became a major technological force. That's why the United States is worried about China, right? So it is already innovation force. I have often heard the expression, this is the Silicon Valley of China. The closest that I've seen is probably Shenzhen, the old Shenzhen. But it's to me, it's always kind of pointless to try to imitate Silicon Valley. Every place has its own culture and should focus on its own culture and its own advantages. Certainly, China would benefit, in my opinion, from immigrants, just like any other place in the world. I think they would bring a different way of thinking, different cultures, and different ideas. So that would definitely benefit.
And we have this global race for technological superiority. I mean, it is going on. It is actually accelerating in recent years. Do you think this kind of competition is actually accelerating or hindering the progress of technological development?
No, here in Silicon Valley, maybe I'm influenced by this Silicon Valley mindset, but competition in general is viewed as positive. I mean, nobody complains if tomorrow Apple or Facebook or whatever comes up with a better chatbot. I mean, of course, the CEO is probably worried, but the average engineer is pleased. It's oh wow, they did this. Oh wow, they did that, and that's also why papers are public, and a lot of code is open source, available to everybody. So general perception is that competition is good. Competition from China has probably been good because we see that the so-called benchmarks. There are these tests where you test how good a system is. The moment somebody here invents something, a Chinese group comes up, does something a little better that performs better on those benchmarks. But I don't see people getting upset. I see people getting motivated to do it better. First of all, why theirs works faster than mine? And second, okay, now I can do it better. And by the way, sometimes we just hire their engineers if they want to come here. So in Silicon Valley, definitely the perception is that competition is good. And I think also worldwide, it's good. People should feel it as fellow humans. And, if somebody had a better idea than mine, I can learn from that idea. And then if I'm really smart, maybe I can have a better idea and so on. And So I don't perceive competition as being bad.
Okay, and Mr. Scaruffi, my final question to you is, if ChatGPT could have a superpower, what would it be?
To mislead people.
To mislead people.
Yeah, that would be the scary thing where at the beginning I used the word miracle. It's not a miracle, but it's a mystery at least. Why GPT can produce such good sentences, good English sentences. It's a little bit of a mystery. It's like we pushed the machine to give an answer, and the machine, because it's under pressure, then it comes up with this beautiful English, but it contains mistakes or it invents stories or so on. Well, I mean, if I had to express one fear, would be that as we keep pushing the machine to give answers, this machine becomes just a generator of false stories that look very, very credible. So that, we have a search engine today, Google, Bing, Baidu, and these search engines give us some information that is mostly correct. And so I'm afraid that ChatGPT will give us search engines that are really out of control. We don't know why they gave the answer they gave, and it's so difficult to find out, is it true or false? So that would be my concern. I honestly don't think we'll get there. I think humans are generally smarter. They can control machines.
That sounds like it is a double-edged sword, but I think that's part of the charm of technology. We just have to maybe have more people trying it out, and as you say, to find out about whether it is a miracle or a mystery. But it has to keep developing, and that's what's going to make our world maybe a better place. Thank you so much. That's Mr. Piero Scaruffi joining us all the way from Silicon Valley. Thank you very much. And that would be the end of our talk and this end of Biz Talk on CGTN. Thank you so much for being with us. I'm Lily Lu. Until next time, bye for now.